We did a thing on place before. We did a film on place, the importance of place. And these two authors, Vine Deloria and Daniel R. Wildcat, they are just awesome. And they're talking about how Western science, Western society, Western education has this tendency to kind of not focus on place. You know, they focus on a whole lot of other things. So the power and place, or I would like to call it the power of place. So going to the pond every day has me experience the place. Now, what I've done in the last, I don't know, decades is I've been focusing on Walter Benjamin. This is his big project called the Arcades Project, and he did it before he died as a kind of like a whole collection of source material that he wanted to go through and then do the main work of his life. He talks about the Flâneur. I'm particularly excited about this notion of, he calls it empathy with the commodity. It's fundamentally empathy with exchange value itself. So he wrote about this idea of an empathy, and he's basing this material on the strolling through the mall, the Flâneur, you know, kind of a slow walking, observing movement. He's drawn from this literature on Flâneur. So I don't know, imagine, and that just brings me back to Paris when I was a boy and I would walk through the streets of Paris. You've been to Paris, right?
Unfortunately.
These grand boulevards, and they were, Napoleon, I think, set them up to be the spectacle, to put people in this like grand military respect for the state. So the Flâneur is kind of looking at that, but Benjamin takes it forward and said, well, let's look at capitalism, because he wanted to reunite with his friends Horkheimer and Adorno, and he wanted to join the Frankfurt School. And Adorno and Horkheimer were saying, hey, you don't really understand Marxism, and you're not really doing critical theory. You're kind of a historian or something, and you write about storytelling, and so he was going to prove to them that he could do the critical work here with the Flâneur. As my favorite essay on storytelling of all time, and that storytelling is coming to an end. Why is it coming to an end? Because we don't have a sense of place. We don't have a sense of connecting to place. Now, there's a second thread here, and it's also about walking around, and starts in Paris, and that's Guy Debord. Guy Debord had something called the derive, and it's a derive way of walking, and the derive way of walking is you walk around Paris and you say, oh, I'm going to put my feelers, sense when there's an aesthetic shift here, shift in my sensibilities that I notice. I'm going to go, what's that about? I'm going to look and see what that's about. So he organized these derive walks through Paris, and they would look in that very militaristic, grand armée kind of environment, say, okay, when can we find, like good Latin food or something, or salsa dancing or something, that's entirely, or we find a really cool garden at the end of this walkway, or, you know what I mean? So he kind of says, we'll do derive walking. So that putting those three together, the power of place, the Flâneur that's looking at capitalism, and Derive Walking, which is looking kind of for a little festival place which you can kind of hide out in and escape kind of the urban jungle. I don't think we'd want to say Paris is an urban jungle, but I think you get my drift here.
Yeah.
So that is what I wanted to present to you. So it occurs to me that Generation Z one is following millennials. And Generation Z, I'm asking how to take a walk to understand water. So this is my premise. And so a drop of water always takes the path of least resistance and travels downhill. So I'm watching how water behaves on my daily trips to the pond. First I do a little jogging with the puppies. I'm not walking. Then I walk, and I'm starting to reflect on all this. Now, first of all, let's set up the difference here. Millennials were born after 1981. Millennials are increasingly ditching logos and luxury brands and going for unique experiences. So it could be that millennials would enjoy Derive Walking and being Flâneurs, Could be. I'm just saying that. Now, Generation Z, born after 1996, highly motivated by social issues and to make a difference. So I'm thinking, maybe there's something here for Generation Z. So I did a little research, as is my nature, and they're talking a lot in the stuff I'm reading about three kinds of Generation Z options. One, you join the doomers, doom and gloom. It's kind of a Nietzsche thing, nihilism. Why bother getting married? Why bother having children? Why bother having a career? Why go to college? The whole ecology is collapsing. The world is heating up. It's global heating. The tipping points have happened. It's the point of no return. So why waste your time? The corporations rule the world. Get over it. Then there's the Generation Z that are out there on the front line with the Extinction Rebellion. Those heads of state can change their policies. We can declare climate emergency, And then there's the Derive app. I don't know if you heard about the Derive app.
No.
It's an application you can download on your iPhone or Android, and I recommend it. I've started using it. You can experience what's happening and maybe save what one can. So I confess, I was a doomer. I wrote a book on the sixth extinction. There's no planet B for the water. I guess I was thrown in the towel. I'm not that hopeful, but thrown in the towel is not that helpful. So then there's the idea we're not doomed. We do not have to put up with poisonous water and air, and it's not the end of history. Fukuyama. I never did buy into Fukuyama's into history. And it's not necessarily into civilization, which I spell with an S. I joined the Extinction Rebellion. And for all of that trouble of joining the Extinction Rebellion, let me see if I can find it here for you. I said I'd like to start the New Mexico branch of it. So when I got my Extinction Rebellion kit, it was how to make a sailboat out of paper. And I did. I folded it, and then I took it to the street. Anyway, it didn't really happen here. Extinction Rebellion didn't take off here in Las Cruces. So and I started to think about Rebel for Life and how I really wanted to be part of that and those protests and get arrested again. I just love getting arrested. So what if it's not the politicians? the whole thing of Extinction Rebellion is we're going to pressure the politicians to change the policies. But what if the fossil fuel CEOs, the big ag, the big pharma, what if the corporations, it's meant to say corporations, have taken we the people power away from us? I'm reading, Ralph Nader just did a thing in Counterpunch. So he's talking about how big corporations sell our big data to each other. And so I have this book that I showed you the other day on Theaters of Capitalism. And I couldn't find, I found actually, okay, here's the true story. I had a publisher, I had a contract, I wrote the book, and then the publisher got somebody that was an academic scholar in narrative. We will not mention the person's name. And that person said, I'm not published, I don't want to be any part of any book project that's talking about spirit, even if it's Hegel or whatever. I can't. No. So the publisher broke my contract. Anyway, so the theory was, we went over a little bit the other day, that you got the spectacle. So Guy Debord's Society of the Spectacle. And it was Aristotle's most hated element of narrative. And then you have this notion of a dialectical historical process that Walter Benjamin is trying to play with. And you've got this notion of a carnival resistance. So carnival resistance, that would be like Extinction Rebellion, out in the streets with carnival. Festivalism is kind of a liberatory dialogue between leaders and peoples that we're trying to get to happen to change what's going on with water. I mentioned the dialectic historical process because Walter Benjamin was trying to learn the dialectical to migrate to the US and work with the Frankfurt School, Adorno and Horkheimer. Enough on that. So now we got the derive, right? Now this derive, a revolutionary strategy, and it's in a paper, Theory of the Derive, 1956, Guy Debord. So you can click on the link and see the derive. They also call it the drift. It's drifting around in a psychogeographical tour. Again, download the app called Derive, and you get these prompts like walk east till you encounter something that disturbs you, and then stop and note, why does that disturb you? What's going on there. And I've been using the app. I find it quite amazing. So let's just I'll call up the app for you, just to do kind of show you how it works. So now I've got the Derive app, and it'll say, give me some instructions as soon as it loads up here. Continue your Derive. Roughly walk eastward until you notice something unreasonable. Be visibly concerned and document your experience. Move back 1 block. And what they're trying to do is, a random number generator is in this device, and it's causing you to go off your normal pathway. So it says, take 2 left turns, 2 rights. Try to document the middle of the road. I wouldn't recommend this in the streets of Paris, but now it's loading up the next random instruction it's going to give me. Search for public transport. Follow it if you can. Okay, which would be very interesting in the city of Las Cruces, because the buses do not run very often here, and they don't go towards the pond.
Yeah.
But it's interesting. So the whole thing is to break you out of your pattern of your normal day-to-day. And so it says, find a street light. Okay.
Also must
I actually have some street lights out here because El Paso Electric has this thing of installing street lamps, so to light up the sky at night. But for those of us moving outside of the city limits, we want no street lights because we prefer to see the stars at night, not your light pollution. So I think it says, take a photograph where you are, you know?
Mhm.
So you get the idea how
Yeah.
this app could be used to get people out of their normal day-to-day routines, their habits, and exploring place in a different way. So let's look at the Flâneur, Walter Benjamin, greatest storyteller, writer of all times. Benjamin's Flâneur is a casual wanderer, the observer, the reporter of the street life, modern city. Walter Benjamin was a historian in a lot of his work, and he looks backwards at time and he sees just accumulations of wreckage that are there. In the book, The One-Way Street, he's got 68 examples. I think that's the correct number of walking through a city in Germany after World War I, and by looking back at the debris that's there, the signs, the behavior of a bartender, some debris on the street, he's like saying, okay, I wonder if I put these signs together, can I predict what's going to be happening here? So it's the memory of the city, and he's trying to get out from under the dominant narrative. He uses words like self-enunciated authority, the technical reproduced image. So he's, I don't know, I just really like Walter Benjamin. And yeah, that's all I got. So I walked to the pond yesterday, and day before yesterday, I walked to the pond, and there was a big bumper from a truck there in the middle of the pond. So I had to walk out in the mud. I got mud all over. The dogs got mud on them. I pulled this bumper out. I bruised some part of my body. It is a heavy bumper. I'm 72 years old. I pulled it out. I stuck it up on the rim, and I said there's another app called Nextdoor. I said, neighbors, thank you for picking up shotgun shells, you hunters. Does anybody want to take possession of this bumper and take it out of the pond? And somebody was saying, aren't you going to move the bumper the next day? And I said, well, I was kind of hoping that I might get some help from my neighbors. You know, people driving around in those recreational vehicles could just throw it in the back and, you know, maybe get some money for recycling. Well, I went to the pond today and the bumper is gone. So I'm thinking that helps me understand that maybe it's not doom and gloom. Maybe it's doing the best you can in the place that you're at, you know what I mean? Doing a little derive walking around. And so something else is happening. Have you seen the movie My Octopus Teacher?
You're telling me to watch it, but I haven't seen
I
it
don't
yet.
think, Julia, you have time for movies. Okay, it's
Not
about
at
this
all.
guy who dives in the coral reefs and he befriends an octopus. I don't know if it's the same kind of coral reefs as in your wonderful session today, but he dives, holds his breath, and makes friends with this octopus. And the octopus usually just runs away. I'm doing octopus motion here. And then, but this octopus eventually takes one of his little things and puts some suckers around the neck, and this then hangs on the guy's chest, and you know they bond, and he follows the life cycle of the life of this octopus for about a year, almost a year, and before it gets older and the sharks get it. So it's kind of got some tragedy in it. It doesn't have a happy ending, but it's kind of cool because he raises the question, is it all right for me to intervene and shoo away these sharks? And I kind of feel the same way at the pond, but it's kind of a dilemma. Anyway, why I'm mentioning that is it's so powerful to watch this relationship between human species and other species.
Well, David, when you talked about, these little tadpoles you were taking from this little puddle in the lake, and you said, who am I? Am I God? But it didn't matter if you took them and put them into the pool, or if you let them there, you discovered the scene and you reacted on the scene. And either way, you were acting, right?
Yeah.
If you did it or if you did it not. So who are we to play God? Yes, this is a question. But if we are not playing God, we are still playing God, right? So this is really the question. Do we do things by not doing them?
I know. I'm so. I want to have answers to that. We are nature. We aren't part of nature. We are nature. So we're nature. That's where I'm coming from, is to a realization that I'm not resigning from critical theory. Okay, don't get me wrong. I'm still a critical theorist, and I believe we can do both the Flâneur walking to look at what's happening in capitalism as it encroaches on the pond, but we can also do the derive walking, and find those little festival places. Like today, I noticed that the Roadrunner was back again, and the Roadrunner doesn't seem to mind me being in the pond. Like weeks ago, the Roadrunner would come, I would come with the dogs, the Roadrunner would be gone, But now the Roadrunner is pecking around looking for insects, I guess, on the edge of the pond, occasionally get a little drink. And then actually comes over within about 15 feet of me, And even though I got 2 dogs on a leash, So, and I've noticed that in the last 3 days, that same Roadrunner, I believe it's the same one, has been there every day. Although this one today looked like the tail feathers were a little shorter and might have been a younger one. A little bit younger. Anyway, I'm starting to get my octopus on, with a Roadrunner,
Wow.
I don't know if you ever seen a Roadrunner, but they are, you got these long tail feathers sticking out the back end of them, and then they kind of scamper around. They can jump up in a tree and stuff. I'm thinking, well, am I switching from my love of tadpoles to a love of Roadrunners, Yesterday was another hatching of the New Mexico spadefoot carnivore tadpoles were out, or at least they'd grown to a size where I could see them. But today they were all gone. So I think it was just the last effort of that species in the last bit of water to try to breed. But now that the Roadrunner is out, so I'm doing my derive walking and appreciating the Roadrunner. So enjoy it while I can is my attitude, I guess, now. So I want to become part of Generation Z, so even though I'm 72, I'm pretty sure it's against the rules. Well, I believe that people could use the Derive app and walk a different path in the place they live. And maybe they find their own pond, they find their own set of trees, some birds, I don't know, something that they can then form a relationship with. Because right now I believe we're estranged from nature, we humans, because of this whole story of separation that's been dominant for the last 2 centuries. That we're all individuals and we don't have relationships, and nature's to be exploited, and we don't have meaning in our life. So we have a whole generation of people, several generations, that trying to find meaning, trying to find relationship to their families. So anyway, I'm going to take my Derive walking and go to the pond and form a relationship with the Roadrunner bird.
It's interesting what you're saying about Derive walking, because you could also do Derive riding, couldn't you?
connecting to yourself with your authentic self, as Heidegger would call it, your potentiality to be a whole self. I want to write to communicate to audiences, definitely. But I have to write from experience. So I'm very much with John Dewey and, William James, and I will have to write experience. So the derive is a way to go out and be experiencing the world, with fresh eyes.